What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to a new episode of Pasty-T Garage. Today we're going to be doing valve covers on a 1993 Nissan Skyline Sedan. And by valve covers, what I mean are we're going to be replacing the gaskets. There's some half-moon seals on the back of the valve covers that we're going to be replacing. And we're also going to be cleaning up any sort of the leaks that occurred for that. Now, one other thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be replacing, let me get a screwdriver, these pieces of hardware. As you can see, these are Phillips head screws that have some sort of a rubber grommet that holds the valve cover in place. And what we're going to be doing is replacing them with a new piece. This Z-Spec valve cover hardware kit. Basically what it consists of are new, let me make sure I don't drop this, these new little seats that are, I'm guessing aluminum, machined aluminum, that will be fitting in that place. And then I have one of the bolts out. And then these Allen bolts right here. So that's what we're going to be replacing it with. Basically do not only a refresh, but also I'll show y'all when I pull one of these out how crusty the old rubber seals are right here. Now, I've been having some leaking for a little while, as you can see. All down the side, all down this side, a little hard to see down the back of the transmission, so figure it's about time to replace the gaskets. Now, the gaskets do come, they're not even on the sides, so what we have is we have two different part numbers. We have this part number 1327058S11 and then 1327058S01. Now these are for the two sides. Confusingly enough, one says rocker cover, one says, oh, this says intake. Okay, so this would be the intake side, this would be the exhaust side. So intake side, exhaust side, intake, exhaust. And then these are the little half moon pieces. There's the part number on that. And this is what they look like. So basically these sit on the very back of the valve cover and they prevent any sort of leakage from the back. So what we're going to do to gain access to these is fairly simple. Take off this charge pipe that goes into the intake. We're going to take it off all the way to where it meets here. That way this whole thing will come out. We're going to remove these hoses. We're going to remove probably this connector for the throttle position sensor. And if there's anything else that seems to kind of get in the way for us getting to all these bolts, then we'll go ahead and remove that too. Another thing that we're going to be doing, and this is just for ease, is I'm going to go ahead and be removing this plate that goes on top of my coils. That way, when I'm pulling the valve cover on and off, there's not going to be any sort of interference from that. So we're going to be doing that today. The tools that I'm going to be using, kind of have some of them staged out right here. We have two different size Allen sockets. One is a 4mm, and that's going to be for one bolt that's in the very back. And then the other one is a 5mm, and that's going to be for the new hardware. We also have a 14mm socket that we're going to be using to take these off for the coil. And then I have an 8mm on a swivel, and that's what I'm going to be using to take off the hose clamps. Outside of that, I have a Phillips head screwdriver that I'm going to be using to remove the valve cover bolts. And that might be it. If we come across any more tools that we need, I'll let you know. Probably some pliers to get the hoses off, maybe some needle nose to get in there, but that should be about it. Not a fairly complicated job. We're going to be taking care of it today, so I hope y'all enjoy this content and look forward to replacing these seals. First thing we're going to be doing is taking off this intake pipe. So I'm going to loosen the hose clamp that's on the throttle body itself. Loosen that a little bit, and then I'm going to loosen the one that's down here. Okay. The other hose clamp I'm going to loosen is off of this piece of the intake pipe. So basically what I'm going to want to do is remove it to where it removes from most of what's covering the intake side. So once those are loose, pull them off. Might be a little tight. Oh, and I also need to remove the fitting that goes on the blow-off valve. So I'm going to remove that, tuck that away. Now this is an RB20DET engine, so if you have a different style RB engine or if you have a different style intake, some of this may not be necessary. Front-facing manifold will have this charge pipe kind of going out this way, so it won't be over the engine. But for traditional engines, this is kind of what it looks like. Tight. Alright. Okay. That is off. We're going to put that down away. Grab the hose clamp that fell. Just going to go ahead and put that back on. And the next thing we're going to do is remove all of these hoses. So I'm just going to remove them from both ends. Because when we take the valve covers off, we want to clean them. So it's a good idea to have everything just removed. We'll keep the clamps on the hoses. Try to. Yeah, that is oily. Catch can may be necessary in the future. This one is a little, yeah, this one's going to be a little tight. Feels very hard. So that one may have to come off after the valve cover's loose. Alright, so next step, what we're going to do is remove the cover on our coils. Now, I have the CX Racing kit, and that comes with this plate, and it comes with some studs that you put down in place of the where the original coils bolt to, and then it has these 14mm nuts that go on the studs. So if you have different kind of coils, if you have stock coils or R35 or whatever, you may have a different arrangement for this, but for me it's 14mm nuts that go on these studs, and there are 5 of them. One of them has a ground strap. Very important to have that ground strap for your loom. As you can see, it's spring-loaded from the sense of the coils themselves are pushing against this plate. I'm going to remove the ground. I'm actually going to unplug all the coils, throw the harness off to the side, and then remove the bracket. So I'm going to get me, a little pocket screwdriver. Get the connectors off. all 6 of them. So I'm going to put the bracket down on the ground. Now I'm going to leave the coils in place for now, just to keep any debris from falling into the hole. And as I said, there is a 4mm. So as you'll notice, I don't have a valley cover for my coils. 2 reasons. Number 1, my car never came with it when I purchased it. And number 2, it wouldn't fit. The stock one wouldn't fit with the new coils I have. They sit up just a little too high for it to fit underneath. And I do have an aftermarket one that I have not put in. I still need to test fit it. Kind of clean that up a little bit. Alright, well, I dropped that. But, handy magnet. So this is the 4mm Allen bolt that is holding on a ground strap to this harness. So we're going to move the harness out of the way. Now we basically have everything cleared except for this hose and the coils. So next step, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove the exhaust side. So it's a little bit easier. Actually, I'm going to go ahead here. So I have this zip tied up against the main wire loom. I'm just going to take that loose so I can flip the whole harness out of the way. That is completely out of the way. So now I have basically free reign. So I'm going to take off one of these and I'm going to show you all the difference between the old and the new. Jeez. Well, the rubber doesn't even want to come off, so. The bad thing about these rubber crush washers is when they get flattened and hardened, they don't really provide any sort of spring effect like like a supple piece of rubber would. So basically it just loosens over time. And I think that is why it partially is leaking. And gaskets get old, they get brittle, they don't really have too much barrier properties. Okay, so everything's loose. Okay. I'll go ahead and fully remove all the screws. I'm going to pull the valve cover off. last one right here. Just fighting me a little bit. Okay, just remove it with the cover itself. Alright, as you can see, that flips right up. Go ahead and move this over here. Alright, so we'll go ahead and show y'all back here. Use this as a pointer. So this is where the half moon seal sits. As you can see, it's kind of brittle because it's got a little impression that the valve cover sits into. But yeah, exhaust side of the valve cover is not too bad. Got a seal on that that looks bad, but it's okay, we'll address that another day. So yeah, not too bad. So basically the next step is I'm going to clean up any residual oil, any sort of like hardened parts of the gasket. Put that on there, that way it will have a fresh seal when I put it all back together. And then we're going to do the same thing to the intake side. Like I said, this hose seems pretty brittle. It's a little bit harder, so what I'm going to do is try to remove it once the valve cover is off by pulling the valve cover towards me. But what I want to show y'all is the crustiness. So, as you can see, let me put it back in the light. As you can see, that is the old rubber that's supposed to hold it in place, and as it gets old, like this one's a good example, it just kind of splits and it doesn't really have the same sort of holding sealing properties. But that's a big shoulder. I mean, it doesn't even look like it's on that shoulder anymore. It's like past it. So it's a good thing we're replacing all this. The new hardware is going to be good. Yeah, we're going to clean all the old stuff out too. So we'll go ahead and do one at a time. That way I don't mix up any hardware. Alright, now we have the valve cover over the bucket that we're going to be spraying brake clean into. First thing I'm going to do is remove the very old gasket. It is extremely brittle. As you can see, it's almost coming out as one piece. Like, no bend, no flex, it's just retaining its form. So, you can see a little glossy on the back side. So, oil was definitely getting past that. I have a little toothbrush and I have a rag, and basically what I'm going to do is just clean up any of the surfaces, spray it with some brake clean, make sure it gets all up in there. Try to keep the brake clean, not splashing on everything. Like I said, just spray a little brake clean. Wash it down with a brush. Okay. So, here's one of the rubber bushings that came off. As you can see, it's pretty hard. Not supposed to be that brittle, but that is just what happens. So we're going to get the rest of them off after I clean this up. That looks pretty good and dry. So now we're going to take out the rubber seal in the back, and we're going to clean up all that area. Right, so like I said before, half-moon seal's back here. I'm imagining it's just as brittle as the rest of the gasket. So hopefully it doesn't fight me. Oh, okay. That was not that bad. Old half-moon seal. You see somebody put some silicone around it. So we're going to need to clean that up. And it is just as brittle. Spray a little bit of brake clean on the entire surface. Here is the cleaned valve cover. Alright, so we have one half-moon seal. I'm going to go ahead and put back into that crevice. Fits in very well. What I may do is just put a couple dabs of silicone on either side of that where it mates with the valve cover gasket. With the new valve cover, we're going to go ahead and place into its home. Valve cover gasket, excuse me. You can see this one's much more flexible. Much more flexible. It's pretty easy to line up. Really only one way it can go on. Thank you to the cam that's on the front that has the big hump. Okay, so it's all installed. As you can see, you kind of have to press it in there. You can see right here, it might be hard to tell, but it's a little flat, and that's where it sits on top of that half-moon seal. The rest of it kind of has like a curvature to it. I'm just going to double check everything's pressed down. Okay, that is ready to go on. Like I said, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple dabs of black silicone on that just to make sure there's no sealing issues. So I would say don't be like me and think that your old tube of silicone is going to last and stay supple in the tip, because it won't. Okay. Just a little bit. If you put too much, you could have a case of it falling into the cover. Okay, now we're going to install this flat on. Pushing some heater hoses out of the way. Okay, bolt holes line up. Verify the seal in the back did not move. Looks good. Yeah, so to give you all a true comparison of old versus new, this is the old and this is the new. Huge difference. Same shoulder seat, just a lot prettier and reusable. And it's an Allen key instead of a Phillips head. We're going to get these started by hand, so I'm going to have to do this in a few sequences. First, I want to start them all by hand. Second, I'm going to suck it down. Because if you can't tell, there's a little bit of a cushion that I have to push through. We're going to get these all started in the hole, and I'm going to hand tighten them down. And then the pattern we're going to do is going to be pretty similar to any multi-bolt thing. We'll start from the middle, we'll do cross, and then we'll start crossing this way till the end, and then we'll torque it in the same sequence. Okay, they are all in. Looks like I need to shift a little bit forward. As you can see, I'm not using a ratchet to tighten these in initially, because I want to make sure that they seat in, not only in the cups, but they seat into the threads very well. Sometimes if you have a ratchet, you might be able to push through any sort of cross-threading or debris or something else on the bolts that may not be seating in flush. But by using just finger torque, more than likely you're not going to be pushing through any sort of cross thread or most of those are down as far as they can be with hand thread. So now we're going to go ahead and do our cross pattern. We're just going to butt it up. Like I said, this is going to take multiple sequences. Make sure that the gasket sits flush. Alright, so I consulted the Nissan manual for these engines, and their torque sequence recommendation is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, the torque spec that they give is between 0.2 and 0.4 kilograms per meter, which translated to foot-pounds, which is more of a traditional American measurement, is about 3 foot-pounds. Now, I don't have a torque wrench that goes that low, so what I'm going to do is basically just get it to where it's snug, give it a little extra oomph, and then check for leaks. Not super scientific, but 3 foot-pounds is nothing. For reference, a typical wheel install is about 80 foot-pounds. So, I wouldn't expect you to have super high torque for this, but I did find it interesting that it's very, very low. Alright, so number 9 and number 10. Okay, yeah, so we're just going to give a little extra oomph on these, just to drive home the 3 foot-pounds. Like I said, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is the sequence. Okay, should be good. So, intake side is done. I'm sorry, exhaust side is done. The next thing we're going to be doing is the intake side. It's basically the exact same thing. Remove all the bolts, remove this hose, clean everything up, clean the cover up, install new hardware, install new gaskets, install silicone in the very back where the half moon seal is, and put it all back together. So as you can see, the intake side's got a little bit more in the way. You got all the wiring harness and everything by the throttle body. So we're going to try to snake each thing in and out. This harness that I could probably remove this hose, this harness. We're going to try to work around that. Hopefully that's not a problem. It's the back bolts that I'm most worried about since I can't see. I could probably just remove this little T and this pipe off the back. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. This give me access. It gives me a little bit more room. Still have the idle air and all this other harness, but at least that's out of the way enough. I can get another flashlight in there to see what I'm looking at. Okay, that should be all of them. I'm going to use a magnet to remove them so they don't fall. Oh, see, that rubber came right off. That's nice. That would be great if they all did that. Instead of me having to fight them out. Now, if you were counting, you might have noticed that I only had 9 bolts removed. Somehow, and I didn't notice this until very recently, the intake side of the valve cover, or rocker cover as Nissan calls them, only had 9 bolts in it. So, good thing I bought new hardware. Alright. That loose. We're going to try to pry that off. Hopefully not damage anything. I'll say that and immediately start damaging the hose. Probably doesn't help that the hose is cracked anyways. So that will be a replacement in the future. I have a tiny hose clamp back there. It looks like on a fuel line. It is butted up against part of the valve cover. free. Pull that off. I'm going to do the same thing. Remove the half moon, clean up the entire valley. Hopefully this one plays nice as well. Alright, so we're done cleaning. So this is the rocker cover for the intake side. There's the part number. We're going to go ahead and install that. Same thing, we're going to push it down into the depression, make sure that it seals. When we put the other half moon seal in, this guy, again, I'll show the part number. I'm going to go ahead and put some silicone where it meets, just to give it that extra little layer of protection. Now the silicone, I'm going to let sit for a whole day before I drive it. But basically, it's going to sit in there like that. We're going to just put silicone on either side of this. So I don't know if I fully showcased. So this is the old gasket. You can see this one's actually a little bit more supple, but it's still very much hard. And then this is the new one. So obviously needed to be changed. We're going to install the new half moon, put some silicone on it, and then throw this bad boy up there. A little bit on there and wipe some of the excessive parts off. Apparently my heater hose wants to fight. slide that part in first. Oh, I see. Yeah, so there's a heater hose clamp that wants to get in the way. Still wants to get in the way. Okay. May not be able to see it, but there's a heater hose clamp back here that was preventing the rear part of that cover from seating correctly. Alright, we got that side tight, so we're going to tighten the other one as best as we can with this Allen key. Doesn't quite fit 100%. We're able to get some sort of a torque in there. Alright, that should be tight enough. Alright, so we'll make sure everything's tight. Alright, the last two are in the back. Okay, that should be it. Now, the only other thing I'm probably going to do, I'm going to pull all the coils out. I'm going to spray the inside of it pretty well, try to get as much of that oily residue that's in there out and let it dry. I'm going to let it dry for a few hours. I'm going to leave the spark plugs in because I don't want all the brake clean to go inside the combustion chamber. But I'm going to do that, and then it'll be time to install everything else. So that completes the valve cover gasket install on the 1993 Nissan Skyline Sedan with the RB20DET engine. we just reinstalled all the rest of the parts that we took off at the very beginning. Last thing we need to do is just go test drive the car, make sure that there are no oil leaks, and everything should be good to go. So I hope y'all enjoyed this episode of Pasty-T Garage. If you did, please like the video and comment below if you have any comments or questions. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.